Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us this morning. It is 9 o'clock. I'm going to give the late risers, the stragglers, the oh my gosh, I need to get more caffeine, aka coffee, an extra minute here, and then we'll get started. If you have any connection issues, such as audio or video or any of those things, you can contact Leah Peters at 260-399-8649, and she will be helping us today. So we'll go ahead and get started. Welcome to the Sage 100 User Group live webcast. Today, myself, Chris Mindrink, partner here at DWD, Mary Hildinger, who a lot of you already would know, has joined me so that we can cover a lot of different areas of Sage 100, kind of give you a recap of what's new, etc. But one of the things that's different from our live version of this is that, how do you ask questions and how do you interact with us? So you can submit questions via the chat box in GoToWebinar. As we get questions, Sherry will let me know, and we will try to answer those questions as we go, or depending on where we are, we may hold a few of them until the end and then cover them at that time. And potentially at different ends of sections, we'll open phone lines if people have questions they want to verbally ask. If you need CPE credit for attending the user group session this morning, just email Leah Peters, lpeters@dwdtechgroup.com, and just note in that subject line that CPE credit so that she can issue that to you. So this morning, we're going to start just basically with a welcome and a little bit about DWD and our group. I'm going to cover the what's new and what's on the horizon. So we're going to take a look back to some of the big things in 2020 and then kind of come forward, because there's a lot of people that may be sitting on 2018, 2019, 17 and older that are looking to upgrade in the next year, et cetera. So typically in these what's new, we cover a couple versions and let you know what we're seeing and all that good stuff. We'll take a break in there, and then we'll go into the enhancements customization section, where I'm going to spend time with you going through and showing you how to do some of these things, talking about things we have done and seen, integrations we have done, all those types of super nerd things that we enjoy doing. Mary's going to cover the utilities and shortcuts in Sage 100, often time savers or the utilization of new features, or even sometimes features we discover that we may not have even known were out there. Surprisingly, as Mary knows, David and our group, who've been around Sage 100 20 plus years, you still learn something new every day. And so she's going to cover some of those things. And then number 5, P. Amborn, who is the director of our IT network service team, is really going to talk about all these cloud connected apps and managing those security risks today at the end. So let's start with today and introductions. As I mentioned, my name is Chris Mindrink. I know a lot of you. I'm a director and a partner here at DWD. I've been in the Sage 100 world for approximately 10 years, and really kind of cover jack of all trades minus general ledger. I let the smarter people like Mary here, who have those fancy 3 letters after their name, do that work. Mary is on the line with us. Mary, if you're there, how many years have you been around Sage 100 now?
Hey, good morning, everybody. As Chris mentioned, I am Mary Hildinger, and I have been around DWD. I just celebrated 26 years of employment with DWD, and of those 26 years, probably about 22 now, I have been working with Sage 100. So
Wow.
Chris is correct. I do learn things every day. Um, so yeah, it's pretty awesome. So welcome everybody. Thank you for being here.
And so we had a little game at our live user group where we asked people to who they are and how long they use Sage 100 or the A version of Sage 100. And we actually had a client that actually beat Mary in the number of years around Sage 100. They actually went back to the Deck Easy days to Mass 90, almost pushed 30 years around the solution. So it's a great thing that the solution has been in the market that long. It just speaks to how robust it actually is and how easy it is to use, and it's great to see things like that and to talk to those people. So DWD, just for anyone that may not know that's on the call, we are a division of Doolin, Ward and DeWall, which is an accounting firm. The technology division was established in 1990. I think the first software that was implemented was BusinessWorks, Sage BusinessWorks. Now we have about 25 to 30 individuals in the software network division, technology group. Our primary focus really is manufacturing, distribution, and then not-for-profits and things like that. That is really where we focus all of our efforts. Here's a list of the individuals on the Sage 100 team and the years with Sage 100 and DWD. A lot of you probably recognize a lot of these names. And really, we're excited to bring Tim Roop on. He joined us back in August to help with the team and all the additional work that's being requested. So we're bringing him in to learn under David and Mary and Rick and myself, and excited to see him grow. And as you clients run into him, right? We joked, be gentle, but Tim's doing a great job, and we just really want to welcome him to the team. Most of you know Michael, Josh, if you're doing any sort of integrations, that kind of stuff, that's really their big specialty. And obviously David, Mary, Brad, and Rick, implementers, trainers, and things like that. And then at the very end there, but not maybe last but not the least, Jama Grabner. So she does a lot of the work getting pricing, getting add-ons added to your system, requesting new users. Basically, if you have something you need from Sage, or you're having an issue, you get a bill from Sage and you don't understand it, it'll just be a lot simpler for you, even if you just come to Jama and say, hey, can you explain this to me? She's a go-getter, and she'll get with Sage and get things straightened out and make sure things are clarified. And so if you run into those scenarios where you're unsure of something around those things, that's Jama's job. That's where she comes into this group. And Con Skembos, a lot of you would have run into Cons at the beginning. He does a lot of the bringing back people to Sage 100 that win backs, or they new clients, different things like that. So he's more of that frontline introduction for who DWD is, and then he typically brings in myself, David, Josh, etc. The software solutions we work with. So obviously Sage 100, that's our dominant one. We've been in that industry and that vertical for a very long time. In the last 3 years, we have added Sage Intacct. Sage bought Intacct a few years back. So bringing that into the family as a cloud accounting solution. It is the AICPA's preferred ERP solution, especially if you are an AR APGL, multi-entity, not-for-profit, those types of things. The Sage 100 software, though, is still our #1 solution for manufacturing and distribution clients. But we do want to let everyone know that DWD Technology Group is one of 5 companies in the United States to be beta testing Sage Intacct's distribution and manufacturing solution. It's not scheduled to be released publicly until later next year. But we've had it for about a year now, and we're providing input, feedback, testing, different things like that. Rick's involved, David's Overholt's been involved. We're really just going through and trying to get the best solution we can. We see it as a future solution for distribution and manufacturing clients that want to move to the cloud, to a cloud native solution. We really do see promise, but again, it's in beta, and right now we only had it sold one in the United States, and DWD is part of that implementation. So we're going to learn a lot real quick, and we'll provide guidance over the coming years on how it looks. And if you have any questions, just let us know. So what do we do for software services? Training, support, upgrades, customizations, custom report writing, conversions, integrations, and probably the #1 thing that I do spend a lot of time with is barcode solutions, right? That has been a very big thing the past 1.5 to 2 years. People wanting to automate processes on the floor, because we are working with less human resources more recently, it seems. And so we really need to make our picking, packing, shipping, or manufacturing, issuing material, tracking our inventory as optimized and as efficient as possible. And these scanning solutions really help with that. And so DWD works with those day in and day out. And so if you have questions or anything around those types of things, later today, we do have our ISV spotlights, and I believe ScanForce is part of that at the beginning. So I would recommend sitting in on that. Our network service team, so Pete, who will be joining us later, runs that. It's important that you have a team that checks in with you and really focuses on the key things. He will talk about managing security today and data backup. In my world, data backup is very important. Obviously, managed security is first and foremost, just because someone getting into your system, right, is what causes you to potentially have to use your data backup. But those two, in my mind, really go hand in hand, and he'll talk more about both of those. We want to announce this and make sure everybody is aware of a free webinar that Mary is presenting on Tuesday, December 13th, 1 to 3 p.m. It's the Sage year-end closing, payroll year-end closing webinar on the things you need to do. It's our highest attended webinar every year, significantly. And so I really encourage everyone to get registered for it now, especially if we get too many, then we may have to split it into 2 sessions. But great information that she provides free of charge to help you get into what you need to do at year end. Okay, so we're going to go into what's new in Sage 100. So the first thing I want to bring up is Sage's IDEA website. So a lot of what we've seen Sage do is look at two different channels for where they're going with the software when it comes to changes and add-ons, different things like that. One is a group called 90 Minds, which DWD is part of, and that's a group of resellers all over the United States where there's a forum, and we get together every March and we talk about the things we've seen. And daily there's postings on, hey, I just saw this, I just saw this. So there's a big hubbub a few months ago about Microsoft 0365 requiring OAuth. Everybody, like, what are you doing? How are we going to handle this? You know, et cetera, et cetera. So it's a group for us to work together, and then Sage comes to us and says, hey, what do you guys think we need to be adding to the solution? There's an area for you as well. Sage very much monitors this ideas website. So real quick, I'm going to flip to that ideas site. So the ideas site, you can log in and you can register ideas, and then you can vote for ideas. And so, as an example, if I was you, I would come in and vote for this add, delete, renumber, merge warehouses. I love that idea, right? So I would log in and vote for that idea to move it up the list. Sage keeps a few different tabs up here, and they tell you ones that are planned, ones that are completed. So there's 382 that have been completed, 15 are currently in the plan stage, right? And you can go to the hot, which are the newest things that people are submitting out there. But Sage very much pays attention to this, right? When they talk about things they're doing, and you'll see in my slides a little bit things that they have added over the years. Some of those ideas, or a good portion of those ideas, came from this area, okay? And so it's a great resource to see what's been completed, just to look, hey, what's new, what's coming, that kind of thing. And then what's planned. So these are things that Sage is saying, hey, we're working on doing these things, right? And then again, putting your feedback and your voting. So I really encourage everyone to use this site and get in there and put things in and put your votes in. You do have a voice in the direction of where it's going. So we're going to hop back to a 2020 release feature real quick, because anyone that's doing upgrades has ran into this, and it explains why some of the screens get garbled, or fields get placed over each other, different things like that. So Sage expanded the name, the address lines, the cities, the different things like that. They expanded those fields so that internationally you can add more information, right? And then they moved the country selection to the top, because that dictates, is it a state, a province, some information about, what is the zip code in that country, etc. Well, when they did that, obviously Sage says, well, hey, yeah, you may have a custom screen, but we got to get our fields in there and expand them. And, you're just going to have to move your fields. So later today, I'll show you, but it's a very simple process to fix it. But typically after an upgrade, when you go into, say, customer maintenance or a sales order, and you go to the address tab or invoice, and anything wrapped around that name, that address, the telephone, those kinds of things, it made the fields and the screens sometimes in some of our clients off. The reasoning was a good reason, right? And it's a very simple fix. Very important that they added these things in. They did an option on the user for map services. A lot of people don't realize this, but there is a button inside of Sage 100 on customer maintenance that actually drives you to a screenshot or a Google Maps or whatever it is that you select of that location. By default, in user maintenance, under select map service, there's MapQuest. To be honest, I didn't even realize MapQuest was still a thing, because I think, like most of the world, we're all using Google Maps, right? So a simple setting, but it can be useful if you want to see something, see where they are, et cetera, et cetera. this little button next to the address will pass it through to Google's API so that it drives right down into it. And you can change that setting in user maintenance. They added the forget me options. So consumer privacy laws, and this really does apply to both customers and vendors. They had to give a way for someone to call in and say, hey, forget me. And when they do, you have to be able to go in and mark them inactive, encrypt their data, different things like that based on these privacy laws. So Sage has built that option. That option can be challenging when it comes to reporting if you use it. If you inactivate and encrypt someone, all their information drops out of address-wise the normal fields and kind of gets into this encrypted string, and can cause, if you're trying to run a report that's by city or state or zip or whatever, right? Sometimes that can get a little dicey because that information's now been encrypted, and thus it can't be part of the report very easily. But again, it's a compliancy with privacy laws that they're building in. And both, again, AR and AP, customer and vendor maintenance. You can apply multiple purchase orders to an invoice or a receipt. Certain things have to match, but if you receive a shipment that is from like a semi pulls in and it's got multiple purchase orders on it, as long as the terms, tax, and the shipping matches, then you can take all those receipts and put them together, and it will appropriately align the receiving to the purchase order. This feature is already in the other side on AR or sales order. You can actually ship multiple sales orders to a customer, again, requiring that you have certain terms aligned, right? The terms code, different things like that. You can ship multiple sales orders on one invoice to the customer. So 2020, they released the purchase side as well, purchase order side as well, to allow multiple receipts against, multiple purchase orders in one receipt. Lot zero expiration was introduced in 2020. So if you're in an industry that has to track when something expires, typically you obviously see this in the food industry, be it pet or human, drug industry, things like that. Sage officially made it part of the product. For many, many years, we had to create user-defined field to capture the expiration date, etc. So in 2020, they started adding that as a native feature in the software, adding certain options. Does a item require an expiration date? Do you calculate something, etc.? So that's in 2020 release, they started building those features in. In AP, again, the mention of the inactive vendors and the encryption that was required, new options on how many months to retain paid invoices, and then a bunch of enhancements around the 1099 form, etc. One of the little things that a lot of us probably found, I don't know if annoying is the right word, but they moved the paperless office button. And so real quick here, I'm gonna hop over so we can look at this, because I think everybody needs to know this. If you're gonna upgrade, or if you have upgrade, you may have noticed that, oh, sorry, this company code doesn't have paperless setup, it looks like. Let me see if this one does. You may have noticed in customer maintenance here that the paperless delivery options is now on the menu up here. Before, it was a button on the screen here. Sage moved it up here to get the screen space back. We have done something where we made a button for someone because they very much didn't want to have to go over here. But Sage moved that over there, and they moved it for both customer maintenance and vendor maintenance. Again, a little thing, but it's just something that we did an upgrade, one of the first upgrades after they did this, and then they called and they're like, all of our paperless stuff is gone. And we're like, huh? Right? So just something to be aware of. All right, so the relocation of that paperless office button. Custom office. So today we're going to talk about custom office, show you more information about it, but the 2020 release added features that are very valuable to people that use this. I had a client that had every one of their users had to have a custom line screen. So every single user had their own sales order screen. That was very hard to maintain. If you added a field to the sales order header, you'd have to go through every screen and add it to the screen for every person, all because of group customizations on the grid didn't work. Well, in 2020, they made a change. Now they allow group customizations on the grid screens. So little features that are very useful were added around custom office. So one of the other things that came with 2020 was the retirement of the old classic UI. They basically enforced that everyone has to go to the new user interface, and they officially retired that classic user interface. So if you're on something older than 2020, know that that's a change that you will be undertaking. It is not a hard change by any means. We have a lot of clients that you just kind of show them and they're like, oh, okay. It's got features to it that are useful, such as I can go to the view tab and then I can say, hey, make the font bigger, because Chris, as he's gotten older, now has to wear officially progressive lenses. And so having that ability to make that font a little bigger without affecting the rest of my Windows applications, a simple little feature that's really nice, and it's in that new UI version. Okay. 2021.1, the release features in that. So we saw a lot serial expiration. Lot serial expiration be enhanced. This is where they started adding customer recall reports, that the lot serial inquiry screen got more information about those different items, etc. So Sage put a lot of effort into that part of it, which was a good thing to see for our food and drug related distributors or manufacturers. In AR, and this is a little thing, but in the AR invoice history inquiry, they added a payments tab, which I found very beneficial, because now I can actually just go look up an invoice and see the payments aligned to that, or multiple payments, or times when people decide to issue a payment, a credit, a debit memo, and now everything's all crazy and we have to figure it all out. It's just nice to look at the document. Here's all the transactions just with that document. There's also a new utility, and Mary will talk a little bit more about the utility menu and things like that later, but in cash receipts, and we saw this on AP as well, in cash receipts, sometimes what happens is a user may be entering cash receipts, they go to lunch, their computer's timeout settings or sleep settings, it goes to sleep, right? Disconnects from the network. Sage now goes, well, where'd you go? Because you were here. Well, now we've disconnected. So if I was in the middle of a cash receipt and I had selected an invoice and a payment amount, but I hadn't saved it yet, it would leave an orphan record about how much cash was applied today. And there's a way for us to go in the back end through data file display and maintenance and change that number to a 0 and off you go, right? One of the requests, and this was a 90 Minds request, is that they provide us a utility to set it to run every night, right? So it will auto resolve that issue. So if there's some invoice out there that has a payments today value, but there's no cash receipt header, it'll correct that issue. So it was a little thing that was added based on 90 Minds feedback that especially in network environments where it's not the most stable at times, helps resolve those issues. Accounts payable, they did a net balance button to help you with the undistributed balance to the current line. And then they've added non-employee compensation to the form type list in 1099 tax reporting as well. Visual Integrator got a big upgrade related to logging what it does. So a lot of us use Visual Integrator quite often, and you really learn that it's more of an art than a science. To some degree, hey, data sizes, columns, et cetera, line up, but then you would read the old cryptic logs when you do an import and think, okay, well, what line is that? And it would give you a line number, but that really wasn't the line number in the file. So all of that got redone so that it really does track the proper row numbers, and it tracks a lot more feedback to that. What's important to understand about this is it also added options for what to do with all the logging that it does, right? Do you create a new log file every single time the job runs? Do you reuse the same one? How do you manage that? If you have jobs that are scheduled to run automatically all the time, then you've got to address that, these options, because obviously if your job runs every 5 minutes or whatever it is, 10 minutes, 15, right? Every time it's logging those transactions, it's building this log file that'll just keep growing and growing and growing until it runs out of disk space, right? So it's important that if you're on the newer releases and you're doing VI jobs, that you really do look at your Visual Integrator options to see what your logging is and where it's going to, and what does that look like to clean it up. A 2021 feature that is the best feature ever in my mind, because when I started with DWD and David Overholt taught me how to copy companies, it was my biggest nightmare, was to copy a test company over a live, right? So there's a way, and again, we'll hop over there real quick. So over here in Library Master Company Maintenance, they've added this company type. And so when you upgrade, I recommend everyone go through and set the types on their company, because if you set this to live, and I'll save that, and say, hey, I want to copy, there's a nice warning now that says, warning, you're about to copy over a live company. Do you want to proceed? This was not there before. You'd come to a screen like this, pick the company, right? And it would say, proceed, are you sure, right? Yes, and go. Well, I just copied test over my live company. So Sage added the option to categorize these companies so that people can and can't copy over. There's some system settings. My worst nightmare was to do this and copy over a live company, so I would always spend extra time looking at this, making sure like I got it right. One time, one client of ours actually did get this wrong years ago, and did override their live one with a backup copy. So I always think back to that, because I always think that's always the thing I was worried about. One of the other things they added in the past couple of years, which is really nice, is when you do copy a company into a test, right? So if I come, we're going to backtrack a little here, and I'm just going to create a company. So when I come into copy, it now says when I want to copy, say, ABC, it actually gives me the option to copy forms for different modules, especially if you have custom forms or custom reports. It allows you to copy those over when you hit proceed. Before you had to move custom reports into these backup companies and things like that to play with them and test them. But this here, when you do this now, gives you the option to copy the forms and the reports. I want to put a caveat out there about creating test companies and then copying into them from a live. If you have significant credit card processing, the time to create a brand new test company and copy the live to the test does exponentially grow based on your volume of credit cards, because if you kind of think of this vault you have out there, right? That vault, when you copy from the source to the destination, also gets copied over and then aligned to that test company with new, what they call GUIDs, globally unique identifiers. And so if you do a lot of credit card processing, that copy function can take a lot of time to go through that process. So just be aware of that. Okay, so back to setting your types. I mentioned that there is an option under the securities for roles, allow, delete, override, live, and archive companies. So you can take that away from every role so no one has a chance of doing that. And then there's an option in display in the panel, right? Is this an archive? Is this a test company? To sometimes make it easier. Mary will show you theme related or visual ways to handle that with test companies later that I really recommend you consider. Making that test company some god awful bright yellow, Barney purple, whatever it is, to make it very obvious to the user that they're in a test company, so that we don't lose a day's worth of data entry because someone was in the wrong company. Small changes, check numbers increased to 10 characters. Again, little, but it affects multiple modules. There's an option to select which user information to display. So is it the login, a code, etc., when looking at various different things. We're not recommending the 64-bit version because there is nothing that is taking advantage of it. The initial rollout, there were certain add-ons that didn't actually work with it. It is, to my understanding, much more stable now than it was. Once we see Sage actually take advantage of the 64-bit part of it, then we will have those conversations and determine if that would be a good choice for you. Accounts payable, AP open invoice paid utility. So it's really the exact same thing I talked about on the accounts receivable or cash receipt side. It's just on the paid invoice side. We can do that as well. Power loss, different things like that can cause it. Again, we can set it up in Task Scheduler and run that in the evening. The DBA name and address for 1099 forms have been added to the additional tab in vendor maintenance. So again, the ability to enter the information that we need to keep track of for 1099 forms. Default form maintenance, which Mary is going to chat about later. This is something that honestly, we found out about this past few months. I believe it may have been David, but it may have been Mary kind of stumbled upon it. I don't want to steal any of Mary's thunder, but just know that it is a great solution for a user that you can dictate what forms they use to print things. And again, Mary will dive into that a little bit more later today, this morning. 2021, we also saw a great feature added to the history invoice when applying a credit memo. So you go into the system and you want to apply a credit memo to an invoice. So you go into sales order and say, hey, I want to do a credit memo, and it'll say, hey, what invoice do you want to apply it to? And from there, it'll say, do you want to recall the items and which cost to use? And so it was a great feature if you, obviously a lot of us would create credit memos. It was a great feature add to make our lives a lot easier. In the bank rec module, when you ran the positive pay export wizard, now it excludes wire transfers from that. And you can, it's really an option. You can specify whether to include them or not, but it was something that some people did not want going into that file. Inventory management, so they set the transaction search default date. You can go in and actually set what you want it to be, current period. A lot of them is, based on the period, but then you could actually come in and say, I want the last 365 days or newer for the transaction. So something that was really nice, because a lot of times it was based off of the period, and not everyone keeps their periods updated in there, right? Custom office, again, they made enhancements to more about the grids and rights to menu access and different things like that. So they did make enhancements around all of that stuff. Library master, this was a small but a big one. So a lot of people don't realize that you can set up what's called unified logon with Sage 100, where you tie your Sage 100 user to your Windows domain user, and then you can use your Windows login to log into Sage 100. We often didn't encourage that because of issues when it came to third-party applications, pulling data through link servers and ODBCs and things like that. There were challenges around that. Sage added a small enhancement to make it so that we could actually now create regular logins with regular passwords, but also utilize a unified login process. Role maintenance. So this was a big, a lot of us, there's so many role setup options, task security options, all kinds of things. So they added a search function, and it was probably the best thing they could have done, because when I often, and we'll just hop over there to look at that real quick. If I go into Library Master and I go into security, so they pulled role maintenance, they pulled user maintenance, they pulled all that into its own little section, okay? I can go into role maintenance now, select a role if I would like, right? And I can see all of these different options out here, right? Of security, and inside of that, I think we've also, some of these get, 100 different options in there, but they added the ability to search. And when I do that, now I can type, say, visual, I know it's something around, say, visual integrator, right? So I can just type the word visual, and it starts running me through the modules, the tasks, security options. I can see them all and say, hey, this is the one I wanted to see, and it'll take me there. So it was a great feature for someone that's trying to find the task or the option or whatever it is, right, that I need to set, because I know that, hey, there's certain rights around the credit card, but where are they in this whole role maintenance thing? Come in, do a search for credit card, and I can see that, okay, I probably got to give this to everyone so that they can void credit card transactions if I use credit cards, right? So if my people come in and do a pre-auth on a sales order, right, and then they go in and delete the sales order, well, then I probably need to give that user the ability to void that pre-auth, right? And so I would need to set that. So great feature add there on that. They also added the ability to run a role report that is much more informational. They allow you to copy and assign roles, and Mary, I think, gets into this a little bit, so I don't want to get too far in, but just know that they did make nice changes inside of this to make the role process much cleaner. Okay, OAuth authentication for SMTP mail server. So I'm sure a lot of you saw communications from us in the summer. Microsoft came out and said, oh, hey, by the way, we are going to shut off basic authentication in our O365 tenants. And the world started to panic. The issue is that basic authentication, which is I have a username and a password to log into the service to send email, was not secure enough, which I mean, in today's world, we understand that changes have to be made, and in technology, we got to find better ways to secure logins and things like that. But the problem is that not just Sage, but a lot of software solutions, all fax machines, paper copiers, different things like that, that may send emails. So if you think of a copy machine where you go in and scan a document and then it turns around and sends it to you in your email, well, that's great, but it doesn't have the ability to do something like OAuth, right? So Microsoft, who said, hey, we're shutting this all down, you're going to have to switch everything to OAuth. We started communicating out that, hey, if you use O365, warning, 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 you have to get upgraded or set up an email relay to handle this. And then about 2 weeks before the deadline, according to Microsoft, Microsoft reversed course. I'm sure there was a lot of pressure being put on them and how it was going to cause issues all over the place. What that really tells me, though, is that Microsoft is going to go down this path, and it's just a matter of time. So the good thing is with Sage 100 during 2021, that version actually had OAuth in it. So if you were on 21 or 22, you were okay. We didn't need to get a relay set up. There would be ways for us to use this OAuth and get it to work. Again, Microsoft backed off that for now, right? But that is something to consider, is getting upgraded to the newer releases that have OAuth, and then maybe trying to switch to that now just to stay ahead of the curve a little bit. Okay, some other small changes. Paperless Office, they added buttons to be able to pull up the delivery logs for the customers, vendors, different things like that. One that was a popular one, and you can find it in the period end area of the purchase order module. It's a purchases clearing from history report. And what it allows you to do, and this is a good one, I'm gonna hop over here. In the purchase order, under period end, I can come in and say purchases clearing from history report, and I can pick the date to exclude transactions after, okay? So this is something that I know that people have asked for, and so Sage delivered it in the 2021 release. This is my purchases clearing history as of 5/31. Now mine, the demo machine, the years and the data is not quite the same, but it is a new report they added to be aware of if you do balance out the purchases clearing. Okay, purchase order. So big one, purchases clearing report. PO receipt of invoice lines now appear in the lines tab when reviewing history. We always thought that was kind of an interesting one, that they didn't keep that information. So inside of the purchases, purchase order receipt history tables, especially in the detailed tables, they would tell you, is this an invoice or a good, right? I or a G, receipt of good. So they were all receipt of goods. It's the only lines they kept. Well, starting in 2021, Sage is now keeping receipt of invoice lines as well, not just the headers. So a good thing if this is information you do reporting on, both of them that will be there now. And the sales order module. So this is one that I always love to point out, and Mary will, I think, talks about this a little bit, but suppress the prompt for the daily sales reports and update. This is a very popular one. So you can go through and set options now to say, don't prompt me when you're going to do the last register, right? You come in, and a lot of us are going just yes, okay, 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 right? Like it's just going. Well, I can go into the security options inside of role maintenance, and now say that users do not have to be asked about printing all the different daily sales reports and printing that GL journal, the GL side of it. So it's a great small change that makes that posting process just smoother and quicker. They are less apt to forget. They made more changes to Visual Integrator when it comes to managing those log files, again, because of the size and where they're saved and different things like that. Just more effort was put into those features, making them optimal or optimized for everyone. And then we mentioned in accounts payable, the DBA stuff, a little more information was added in 2021.2 to capture more information related to those things. So in 2022, one of the things that was added, which I haven't had a lot of clients mention this, and then all of a sudden I had someone, and so now it's there. It's the idea of public favorites. So if you've used the new user interface, you know that you can drag and drop into the favorites folder and make a list of things that you do on a day in, day out basis. So it's a quick way to just go and click on it. Well, this option now allows you to set up a public one that are links to things that everybody should be able to see and get to. This way they don't have to go to the module, click on the different areas, drill down into this. There's a custom report that we all use. I can drag it into the public favorites, and everybody can see it in public favorites. They don't really have to know how to navigate through the different menus to that favorite. Okay. Another good one, and a couple of these were there, but this is the exclude inactive items from lookups. So I put a note on this. This came from the ideas site. So again, go vote on the merge edit warehouse one for me. This one is, I may inactivate items, but in the lookups, if I do a lookup in sales order entry on lines, those still show up unless I do something to filter them out, right? Now, I can build a custom lookup, I can filter them out and go about it that way. But this allows me to just say, don't display inactive items. So when they go in there and they do a lookup, it's only active items. It's very useful. There are some clients of mine that are going to test sales order or whatever it is, a purchase order thing that we're doing. And I pick an item and it's like, this is an active item. And I pick another one, this is an active item. And I'm like, okay, what items are actually active? So this is a great thing to be aware of and to utilize. You do it under company maintenance, under the preferences tab, and you can actually inactivate multiple different things: vendors, customers, items, and warehouses. So someone can't select an inactive warehouse when making a sales order or whatever. Okay, it's a great option to be aware of and to utilize. This one, okay, I'll be honest, it came from the ideas site. I haven't 100% figured out the use of it. Here, the idea is that you can save date selections on reports. So you can make a custom report setting and you can check a box to say save date selections. And then when you run it, right, it saves that selection. So the next time you come in, that date is there. It seems like when I go to run it next time, while it's nice that the date is there, those aren't the dates I'd want to use because it would probably be a different date range potentially, right? But again, it was a feature that they added. It came from the Ideas website. This idea was much nicer, much better. And again, go out there to the Ideas site and vote for the warehouse one. Okay. Item image upload. A lot of people don't even know this exists, but on the item screen under additional, I can go into the folder icon and pop up and select an image. It'll pull it in as long as it's of image types and link it to the item. And that little camera button there, I can always go look at that picture. They added the ability to have more image types than what they originally had. Small changes to sales order years to retain history. And so this one is something I encourage everyone to go through and consider looking at their history tab for their different modules. This is a sales order related function, but every purchase order, AP, AR, they all have a history tab that they keep track of things. I encourage you to go out there and look at your settings and know what they are. A lot of people have implemented, 8 years ago, and they really don't know what they are, and all of a sudden they look at them and go, oh, why would it only be 2 years of this, or different things like that. So go out there, look at those settings. If there's any questions about them, let us know. Most of the time, if you haven't audited those, you will probably have questions and you will probably make a change. But they did change the default of retain history to 5 years. It does not affect the current system setup. So if we upgrade you, it's not going to change it to 5. It's going to be whatever you had it be. Hence, go out there and review these options. You cannot change the options with someone in the system. Okay, you have to wait until people are out of that module and related modules. But I would review them, make notes, and then when people are not in, make those changes. Sales order history, they added fields for order type, ship date, and expire date. And you think, okay, it's really important if you do any reporting using your sales order history table, because often you had to link back to the open sales orders to find out what the order type was. Was it a standard order or back order? Things like that. When was it expiring? And it seemed like it should just be in that one table. And so Sage has added that into that one table and brought it forth to the screen as well, so you can see it if you do an inquiry. In item maintenance, they show the number of, or the quantity that are in a quote in Sage 100. So if you use Sage 100 and use the sales order module and you use the quote option, it doesn't put demand on the item in item maintenance under the quantity on sales order, right? Because these are quotes. They're not a demand. They're just, hey, I'm getting pricing out the door. But if you now go to the orders tab and look, you can see a total quoted. Again, this was something that came from the Ideas website. A big one, if you're a work order module user. So starting in Sage 100 2022, you cannot upgrade to this version unless you convert to production management. You have to go to 2021, and we have to get agreement with Sage to do that. Which we have. That doesn't seem to have been a problem, but I think it's important for everyone to know that if you use the work order module and you want to go above 2021, then where you have to switch to the production management module, which, as you'll see, is where Sage is putting a lot of resources as we keep going through this presentation. And at this point, there is very little reason that people are staying on work order. Just because there are certain things in production management that are definitely better. So with that said, production management in 2022 release, this module saw the most work. A lot of us know that originally Scanco wrote the production management module for Sage. back in the 2019 version was the first release, right? The 2022 version is when Sage took over production management and its code base in 2021. And now they are working on making changes, making it better, more efficient. Okay. An example is inside of production management, and we'll just flip over to that real quick. Inside of production management now, if I go to work ticket entry, if you have this module, often when you select an item, okay, you had to go up to this copy from button and say copy from the bill of material, copy from whatever, right? For it to pull in the steps and the materials. Sage changed that process. So now all I got to do is just keep moving through my screen, quantity 10, I can go to steps and they're all there. So they took away that step of me having to say copy from the bill of material. Now the copy from can still be used. It's used for copying from an open work ticket, from a history work ticket, etc. But they did smooth that process out, which was really nice. Just a minor thing, but a time saver when it comes to clicks, right? With that, they had to bring those fields back to the main screen. They added the ability to create and maintain memos like the other modules. So a lot of us know that, in a customer maintenance, I can add a memo about the customer, items, I can add a memo item, sales order about the sales order, whatever, right? A lot of us do those types of things. And they added that functionality inside of the work ticket. A little change in whatever, the labor and material issue method, based on your system settings, defaults to something, be it an auto issue, a backflush, or actual. They changed them from checkboxes to a drop down in this release. They added the ability to get to item maintenance and alias items on the material tab, and they made it a cleaner way to add attachments to a work ticket in this release as well. Employee maintenance saw a layout change. If you're using this, they made the screen bigger, wider, and just laid it out much better than what it is right now. So when you go in and look someone up, instead of this little, I don't even know, it's probably 4 inches by 2.5 inches tall screen, right? Just more information can now be kept in there. Telephone extensions, email addresses, etc., is now actually captured in there. A big change is in the time entry process for production management. So if you do labor entry, if you do it manually, this is a godsend. Basically, it turns into a true row tab through enter information like a sales order line or a purchase order line entry process, right? If you're using scanners, right, and you're scanning labor in and you push it to Sage and you want to go and edit it, it's much easier now to go in there and look at it in this grid view and find the entry and make adjustments to it. So they definitely cleaned all of that up. And then they made it the true drag and drop grid entry, much like the other screens where maybe I want to see the employee name up to their next to their number or the identifier, right? So a lot more information provided on that labor entry screen. They added a user-defined info code, so a nice little thing that you can add to your steps inside of a work ticket. Make it a custom field that you need to capture, be it inspection status is example here, right? A, B, C, D, F to be done. And then I can go in there and say, hey, here's the status of each of these steps, right? And you can set up these codes and their descriptions and their options when they select them. And it all ties back to that work ticket step. So it's a much cleaner interaction with those data captures inside of Sage when it relates to the steps and where it's at and what it's doing. And item maintenance, they added information about work ticket and required for work ticket on the the quantity and orders tab, the main screen that we're all used to going and seeing on work ticket and require for work ticket is still there. That's where it's always been, but this is putting it on like the orders and the transactions and putting it on the other tabs that it was missing from. They added all those calculations, and other columns from the work ticket can be added to this grid now. You have the ability to use a material where used inquiry and sort it by column headers. The payroll integration was improved. You don't have to run a report to push the labor entries to the payroll module now. There's just a button you click and it pushes that information over. Another thing that isn't in my list here as I go through this, Visual Integrator, the importing into the production management module through VI in 2022 got significantly better. We saw a lot of problems initially in 2019 to work around using the Visual Integrator tool and trying to get the data to map, etc. But with 2022, Sage spent a lot of time getting all of that aligned appropriately and making sure it worked. And we've seen a lot better results, a lot more flexibility and functionality with VI and production management now. An important thing to know is in 2022, if you are on work order, that it will bring in the work order history to the production management history now. That was a feature they added in 2022. Another thing to note is that if you link purchase orders to work orders, currently there is some sort of disconnect there in that you do have to relink them after they migrate from work order to production management. David in our group is actually looking at that to see if there's anything we can do on our side to make that work better or differently ourselves until Sage comes out and either adds that part or whatever it is. Okay. So a lot of effort was put into that production management module this time around, and you can see on there as they go down the road that was a main focus and will continue to be for a little bit here. Inventory requirement planning. So in 2022.1, they added the ERP module back into Sage. Really what it was it was missing for a moment on the initial release of 2022 as they were working on it. Didn't really affect any of our clients because most times we often do not implement an upgrade before the first service pack is released because we don't want to have to deal with any potential problems that could be in a new release initially. So we always recommend wait for the first service pack. The ERP added a feature to maintain the project demands so that you can come in and say, hey, here's the demand for these periods for this item, and then it will utilize that in its calculations. And then there's a new feature that's coming, which I'll get to in a little bit, but around scheduling this, because this tool can take a while to run as it goes through all of your sales orders and all of your purchase orders and all of your work tickets to say, here's the recommended things to build for work tickets, recommended things that you may need to purchase, etc. So that tool is getting features added to it as we keep moving forward. So safe harbor statement here is basically this is what we know to be coming in 2023 in the future. Obviously, Sage can change their mind, and certain things may or may not happen. I feel pretty confident about the list that I have, but again, not in DWD's control on what they do or don't do. a big thing that it's important that we understand our value and our benefits of that. Sage 100, they're first and foremost that they want to be the simple, reliable, and compliant software. So they really are making sure that they're staying GAAP, IRFS, compliant with the rights to be forgotten, consumer privacy, different things like that. So they are focused on that. You can run Sage from 100 from different deployment options. There's the on-premise, right, which a lot of us utilize. There is the cloud. We have clients on Azure. We have clients on AWS. We have clients on hosting providers that we work with. So there's a lot of options when it comes to deploying Sage 100 into the world. The big foundational pillars that they're going to work off of is A, to be trusted, so 30 plus years, which I mentioned earlier. We have someone that works with Sage 100 and it has been almost 30 years worth. The second one is the ability to be customizable enhancements and things like that upgrade simply or easily. That's a key thing. So a lot of the work we do, utilizing methods that when we do upgrades and server moves, that we don't have to completely rewrite what we're doing. And so we're using the business object framework and different things like that. It's a very important, and those are very standardized and great system tools to use. And then the connected to the cloud part of it, be it Sage Data and Analytics, be it credit card processing with e-invoicing, automatic bank feeds, Sage Inventory Advisor, which is like a highly analytical inventory tool that can, look at your inventory, look at your sales, look at your purchasing, when do things come in, recommend seasonal, that, hey, you know what, during April, you start really ramping up this type of product, but your lead time right now is looking like it's 120 days. So here you may need to order next week, and actually has the ability to create purchase orders and put them in Sage 100. So these cloud connected tools just keep getting built out to give you that more detailed information. Their priorities, again, is the core Sage 100. Right, so that's going to be that compliancy, connected services, improvements to the manufacturing process, and then if you so want, for someone to move into a cloud-hosted environment. The roadmap, kind of laying it out through March of this next year, you're going to see basically what we said in 2022. We saw projected demand, fixes, enhanceability, production management code, updated. So, it's going to be a month or two where they're focusing on any bugs, fixing those, year-end updates, whatever the laws change to. And then coming in March, they're talking about actually more enhancements to production management, a global search feature, and other things that I've got a little bit of a list here to share. So what do we see for 2023 coming? So here's some of them. One is, and this is more probably for DWD, but anybody else that may do this themselves. One of the funny things to us was when you go to install it, it says, well, what version do you want to install? Standard, Advanced, Premium, what's your database and all these things. And then, hey, what's your license key? And then it would say, oh, that's your license key. Well, you can't install Premium because that's not what your license is for. So they've changed all that, so that's a little more functional, where it's going to say, hey, what's the license key? Oh, okay, now, hey, these are the versions you can use. They made a recents list to the launcher. I'm actually interested in that one because then it's kind of builds your own favorites list as you use the system, right? What ones have you been in recently? So we're excited to see that. They are going to have a show hide the inactive warehouse, and item maintenance and inquiry and things like that. But again, I encourage you to go to the idea site and vote for the idea of merging and removing of warehouses. They're going to hide zero quantity lot serials with a button. So if you're a company that does a lot of work with lot and serial, while for everybody else that's not a big deal, that's a big thing for them, because a lot of times that history just gets muddied up with a bunch of zeros because you've sold it. This allows you to click it and hey, these are the things that I have right the second listed by serial number. You can remove inactive items with no history. Again, just giving you a new utility to use to clean up items. You can, if someone inactivates customers and vendors, it writes it to the activity log. And really the activity log in Sage, a lot of us don't use it too much, but know that it's out there because they've added some features back in 2019. There's a system activity log, which kind of tells you people logging in, logging out. If they take an action, like they run a utility to purge data, things like that, you can go to that log and actually see that information. There's actually also in AR, AP, and things like that, there are some audit trails that you can turn on so that you can actually, and there's different levels of that, but you can go in and say, hey, turn on auditing of customer maintenance. So if someone goes in and changes a customer and changes a field, it logs it, right? And then you can go run that log and see the changes made. A lot of places don't turn that on unless there's something that makes them want to, right? Someone's going in and changing salespersons or whatever, right? Sometimes that is a way that they try to track that. Sometimes we just script it. And so if someone tries to change a salesperson, it sends an email or whatever. But again, there is audit logs and activity logs. One that was on the list, and again, this is a list that we were given, select multiple invoices in an AP invoice payment selection. Mary and I kind of looked at each other when we saw that and thought, okay, kind of can do that now. So we're not 100% sure what that is yet. I'm assuming it's just an enhancement in how that process works. Branding update. So if you've seen any of Sage's marketing that they've put out more recently, you'll notice that they have a different look about them and who they're reaching out to. So they are trying to align what's in all their applications to match that branding. One of the things you'll see this coming year, interestingly enough, is Sage announced at their event in October that they have a relationship with Major League Baseball and that they will start being part of the Sage, I forget exactly what they called it, but it was like Sage Analytics, and you'll start seeing them in baseball games on television, brought to you by Sage and different things like that. So Sage is making a significant push in that area around their branding and their naming and their marketing. Production management. So number one, if you're a production management user, scheduling is on the deliverable. They say this is based off what was originally in work order. I make no promises. I know nothing about what this is exactly yet. So I can't speak to any of its functionality. Obviously, as soon as we get it, we'll take a look at it. I know there were limitations with the work order scheduling, but at the same time, maybe they've addressed some of those. So know that it's out there, know that it is in the pipeline and supposedly a deliverable for 2023. And once we know more, I am sure we'll share it with everyone. If you use your work ticket templates to do your materials, they now allow for the scrap percentage on those materials to be entered. It did not before. Most of our clients are using the bill of materials and that already had the scrap percentage. But if you are using the work ticket templates, that has been added. So now they've changed the material issue tab. There's a process you have to go through to issue material if you do it manually. I mean, a lot of people that we work with when they're issuing material are doing it through, if they're doing actuals, are doing it through a device, a scanner of some sort. or they're back flushing or auto issuing that. But they just made the data entry part of entering material for the work ticket cleaner. They adjust how the GL accounts are aligned to the employees. We'll know more exactly on how they did that when we get to see it. Right now, we know that there's a disconnect between departments and the activity code. So hopefully a lot of that will be addressed. Work ticket history inquiry will provide the ability to see lot serial numbers for items entered on the work ticket. While it sounds little, kind of surprised me because I went back and looked and I'm like, oh, hey, yeah, it doesn't tell me what serials I align to the work ticket when I'm in the user interface. The data is there, it's captured, it's not displayed. You can get it from reporting, things like that. They're adding a purge work ticket history, which is there already, but now they're giving it a little bit more detail on how to do the purging, right? Activity codes on the fly, which is really nice, especially if you're doing steps as you go, right? Because right now you have to, when you're in there, if you're in a work ticket and you want to add a new activity, you've got to go over to activity code maintenance, add the new activity, then come back to the work ticket. Now I can select that activity. So they're given an option to allow people to create activity codes on the fly. And then they're bringing the option into relieve WIP based on the percent complete, right? If I've got 100 of them and I'm completing 50, right? Then that's 50% complete. So I'm going to pull 50% from WIP. IRP, again, those deliverables, the locking of demands, and really the important one is the ability to schedule IRP through night. Generation at really big companies can take some time, so you could schedule it at night. So when you come in the morning, all that's done and ready for you to use all day. And then they added, again, options for the projected demand that they keep working out. Okay. Whew. That was a lot of information in an hour and 23 minutes. So first off, I would like to open the floor to any questions that anyone may have regarding any of these things that we've talked about, or really anything. Mary and I are here to answer to the best of our ability, or if we don't know the answer, we'll find the answer and get with you offline. Are there any questions at the moment?
Yeah, Chris. Oh, you got it, Sherry.
Yeah. So a number of people have asked about if the session is being recorded and will they receive a copy of the recording. So yes, we will email everybody a link to this recorded webinar either tomorrow or later this week. And then we had one question, Chris, while you were talking about version 2022 of production management, Alex from Alconex asked, in sales order, can you see what work tickets are being made for each sales order line?
So that's a great question. And this answer for standard Sage 100 is no. Standard Sage 100 does not have the ability to see the sales order that the work ticket is aligned to. That said, we've had numerous places where we have taken the information and put it into sales order for them. So what I mean by that is we've added a field over here that we put the information back to the sales order. When you say, hey, I'm on a work ticket and I'm selecting this sales order, right? We wrote that back. And we added a button here, which is, again, a little thing that we did so that you could actually click and say, hey, open that work ticket, so I could easily see it, right? It finds that referenced work ticket. So out of the box, Sage did not have these features to do this. So that's where we came in and added these simple little things to make that a much better process. Great question.
All right. And then we have a question from Mary at IDS Blast. She asked, related to purchases clearing from the history report. Have you found that it does tie to the GL?
I myself have not looked in depth at that report. Mary, have you?
I have not either, so we'll take an action on that, and we'll look back and see if that does ripple back.
Right.
That's it for the questions submitted via chat. If anybody
Okay.
wants to go ahead and submit a question via chat, or you can use the, oh, here comes one. Charles Mahoney says, FYI, Scanco has added the ability with production management to auto-create work tickets from sales order, like the old work order.
Yes, ScanForce, ScanCo, and DWD all wrote those. We've had ours since 2019 version.
Okay.
And then you can buy theirs. Theirs cost a little more than ours. But they both add that feature, yes.
And that is it for questions right now.
Okay, so why don't we go to the drawing part of this?
Yay!
So, yay! I mean, these two are jumping like I feel like I should jump, but now, in all transparency, everybody's gonna have to suffer for a moment and see me because I want no one to complain that I cheated. This is a bowl. Okay, and we're going to pull. We're going to start with the Adidas drawstring bags. So we're going to pull two different individuals each time. So the first one for the drawstring is Sandra Wagner from Lake Court. Sandy, congratulations. That. The second drawstring bag is Crystal Bean. Congratulations. Keep these straight on my end. The Yeti tumblers, which I'll be honest, are a favorite of the employees here on the team. You can fit a lot of coffee in those.
Word.
Laura, Laura Lehman. Excellent. Laura's going to enjoy that. And then, nope, I drew two. Hang on. Second one goes to James McFadden. Excellent, James. All right, we have two blankets.
Well, one minor change. We are out of blankets, but we have a really nice OGO backpack that we're going to give away in replacement of the blankets.
Okay. And it is a very nice backpack. A lot of us use ours internally here. They are very nice. The first one for the backpack is Ben from KBS. Excellent, Ben. And the next one is Jill Newman. Excellent, Jill. Okay, and then two golf umbrellas, which right now, umbrellas would be a great idea because it's supposed to rain and then turn to snow in horrible weather. CJ Elliott gets an umbrella. You will utilize that, CJ, up there in Michigan. And then last but not least, Margie Hammond. You will also use it being here in Fort Wayne. All right. Thank you, everyone. We're going to take a, go ahead, Sherry.
All the prizes will be mailed out to all of the winners in the next week.
Okay. So we're going to take a, yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry, it's Mary here. Got a couple of quick questions here. Are they planning to include job costs in Sage Intact? That was a question from Bill Maple.
So Sage Intact has project accounting in it. It's often what people use for a job cost scenario. I guess it just depends on what features you need in a job cost environment. So it'd be a great thing we can take offline and understand your need, and then let you know if that aligns to what they have in the market.
And then one more question from Joanne. More information on multiple invoice selections during AP payments. So again, Joanne, we aren't sure what Sage has in store for that feature that's coming potentially in 2023. Right now, what you have as far as being able to select those invoices is what Sage offers at this time. So as soon as we find out more, we'll be certainly sharing that with folks.
Right. It'll probably be one of those things that's in our newsletter. So if you're not signed up for that newsletter, let us know. We'll get you added, because those are the kind of things, once we start seeing releases and getting a little more information, that are often found in those that go out. What's the cadence for the newsletter, Sherry?
Every other month.
Every other month?
1 month, one month we send a newsletter that talks about new information about the product. Then the next month we send a step-by-step software tip that shows you how to do something within the software.
Right. So I would really recommend everyone sign up for those, because a lot of times those tips are driven by the requests that we're getting from clients on how to address this, or how do I do this, or hey, this keeps happening. Often we make those tips for that specific reason, right? Because we try to, what are we going to talk about? What are we going to make a tip on? It's like this 15-minute conversation of 7 of us going, I don't know. And so we always look to what are the problems we're having with, or what are the questions we're getting, not necessarily problems, just questions. And then we try to make a tip on that. So between the newsletter and the tip, I really recommend you sign up and be part of that communication. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a 5-minute pause here. Everyone can get some more caffeine or water, or take a restroom break, and then we're going to reconvene, and we'll dive into the enhancements, customizations of Sage 100 for the next 30 minutes. All right, let's go ahead and dive into this next section. So there's a PowerPoint to it. I would say that it's, I'm not going to spend much time in it. I really think I want to show you and walk through different things. A big thing that we do spend time with is making enhancements and adding fields and what we call scripting with clients in Sage 100, and then integrations. So a big portion of what like 3 or 4 of us do is that type of work. Be it that a company has an API we can use to get order information from, or to send order information to. We spend time doing those. And an example is we have a client that another company fulfills certain items that may get ordered by company A's customers. Company B actually fulfills a subset of those for them. And so when the orders get into Sage, then we talk to company B via an API that they have, and we send them an order and say, hey, this is what we need you to fulfill. And then they fulfill, and we're checking in with them through their API. Hey, have you done? What have you done? What have you done? And then it comes back, and then we actually take that and create a sales order invoice for it. And so we spend a good amount of time doing that. But those are that's a complicated process, right? That does take someone that has experience with APIs and code and different things like that. What we're going to work through a lot here in the next 20 minutes or so is going to be like the fundamentals and the basics of the screens and the fields and things like that, because we want to take some of that scary out of it. A lot of people think, oh my gosh, you're going to enhance or customize the ERP, and they hesitate. But the thing with Sage 100, and one of the reasons it's been in the market and is so flexible for so long, is that a lot of these things that we do go through upgrades very easily. They're not a something that we view as a risk to anything. So with that, we'll change the look and feel of the screens. You'll see what that takes and what it looks like. And during upgrades, I talked about how Sage moved fields about and what we have to do to fix it, stuff like that. We'll look at custom fields and adding them to the system, adding them to the screen, some of the gotchas around some of that stuff, or not, I don't know if the gotcha is the right word, but things that we've learned over the years that are more effective at doing things. We'll talk some more about the scripting and all those kinds of things. And today that's going to be kind of the focus, but just know that we do third-party integrations, API integrations that I talked about, different things like that as well. So let's just dive in, right? So inside of Sage 100, you can easily add a field to a screen. So for example, if inside a sales order entry, okay, I pull up the screen and I've got a sales order, but I feel like I would like to know where this order came from. Why did they decide to place this order, right? Maybe I'll use it for marketing information, just where did it come from? Why did it come from type thing, okay? So I want to add a field to my sales order. Well, I can go into what's called Custom Office. Inside of Custom Office is where I can make changes to Sage 100. The customizer here is related to the screen. This is fields and tables, and this is related to scripting. What we're going to do real quick, since we're on the new user interface, I'm going to turn up application scaling to make the font a little bigger. I think that'll make it easier for all of us to see. And then inside of here, let's go into what's called user-defined field and table maintenance. So inside of this is every single module in Sage 100. So especially if you have production management already and are on 2022, you'll see that in there. Every module would then be considered on the new framework, and you'll be able to add fields to it. Some modules are more receptive, it's probably the best way to put it, than others. And what I mean by that is sometimes the flow of information between A to B in modules like purchase order and sales order and are very clean, and you can go all the way from a sales order pulling information in from an item, et cetera, all the way through posting that into history. So for today, we talked about, at the moment, we're just going to go to the sales order and we want to add an order source field, right? So I'm going to go to the sales order module. I'm going to go to sales order header, and I'm going to say edit the fields. I'm going to right click. Real quick, just to kind of understand what you see here. One, obviously, is edit fields, right? That's obvious. Advanced field settings here. So let's click on that guy real quick. Advanced field settings is useful if you had a field that you wanted. So let's say that this is a sales order, right? So if I wanted the bill to city, we're just going to pick something here, to be required, I could say it's required, but only for company CRM. No other company code will require that field. You could do that, right? I could do all companies, but define this to be only, well, I only have my user, so that didn't work out, but a specific user, right? So you can define the requirement of a field based on user and company. You can also then put validation with fields and default values, things like that in there. So when they go to use it, whatever your setting is, you know, it's required or it's got a value. My only caveat to this is I tell people not to use this on the AR customer table if they have any sort of integration that creates customers. You don't want to set required fields through this, because then it's going to require that to come through on those other tools, and they may not actually have that information at the time. But that's the advanced field settings. That's where I can go in and define in more granular level requirements for my fields. User-defined scripts, which we can talk a little bit more later, but for the moment, let's click Edit Fields and say we're going to add a field, just simple plus green here, and call it order source. Okay, so I could literally make this manual entry. Okay, I could click OK, or I could make it a Dropbox, and then under the validation tab, type a list. Right, same with the list box, or just a different type of a box that you're going to see. Right, or checkboxes, which in this case wouldn't make any sense, but a lot of people will look at this and go, well, I want to use a Dropbox or a list box. So we know at AUD that these two items here, there are limitations with them. The Dropbox, here I could type a list of things, right? Magazine, television, YouTube, right? And I can make this drop-down list all nice. The issue that you have is that the only way to add or update a field to Sage 100 is to get everyone out and have them stay out of any module that's related to sales order, which you think to yourself, well, okay, let's just get them out of sales order, but purchase order can be related to items, item maintenance, and item transaction. That's all related to it. So any modules, usually my rule of thumb is just get people out. Like, it's just easier to say everyone out, we're adding a field, right? Often we're doing this, you know, after hours when you guys aren't necessarily open and using it, things like that. And so if you wanted to change this list, you would have to get everybody out to do that. We know that there's actually a better way. And we're going to back up here so you can kind of see that. What I can do is I can come in here, and Sage has an option to make what's called a user-defined table. Okay, so I can come in and say, create a new user-defined table. We'll call it order source. Okay. The key field name is order source. We'll take that word out, right? What is it? And then how many characters? And I'm just going to put it to 50. So in doing this, creating this user-defined table, right, up it comes and it says, hey, this is the field. I could add more fields like description and you know, detailed. So I could come in here and say, hey, to this table, source description, right? And I could say, hey, that description could be 150 characters, no, 140. And I'll just say, okay. Notice that there's options. You can make it always display in uppercase, center text, different things like that. But for now, we're just going to create ourselves a small UDT, user-defined table. We click OK. It's going to add this table to Sage 100. When it adds it to Sage 100, it actually does add it to every company code. Now, you can use or not use the UDFs, UDTs in each company code, and you can, as you'll see, control the screen, how it looks based on a user, customization group, a company code. But I've got this simple order source table, right? I'm going to right click it, maintain the data. And in here, I'm going to put YouTube music channels. Let's put television. Oh my, I just spelled that wrong. I am not television. I'm having a moment. Radio, magazine. Okay, just some simple, and I could put in here. And we'll put Fox Sports. Okay. You know me, you know that I'm a Ohio State fan and that we have a big game coming up against Michigan here shortly. So we're going to advertise on those. So we've got this table, order source, right? So back on the sales order header, I'm going to edit fields again, and I'm going to put my order source field in here, order source, and I'm going to click OK. And here I'm going to match my length to 50, and I'm going to, on the validation tab, select my user-defined table order source. So I do this because the drop box and list box, the only way to update the values in it is to get everybody out to deal with it, right? Using this UDT idea is I can now go into the UDT at any time, people in the system or not, and change the values, right? So it's much, much more flexible. Click OK, click Update, say yes. It'll run through. Obviously, when you're adding a field again, you've got to get people out of Sage 100 while it's doing this work. So we'll have the field inserted into Sage 100. Again, this field will go into what we call a data dictionary or the database for every single company, right? Again, we don't have to use that field for every single company in the user interface, but it's there if it was to be used. So now I want to add that to the screen. And this is where when we upgrade and we have to go in and modify screens and drag fields and reset things, this is what we're using, okay? So I've got the field added. I know it's in my data table. I'm going to cheat because there is a way to do it through here. I can go to sales order entry itself, right? And I can say, hey, right click, panel settings, customizer. Up comes a screen that says, okay, you already have customized panels. That could list a lot of them. And it could be based on user, a company, customization group, many different things like that, okay? So if you go in there and you see a long list, obviously just understanding how that works is if it's a company code specific list, it always wins over the all user, all company. So if I see all users, but I see company PMZ, when I'm in PMZ, that's the screen it will use. If I'm in any other company code I have, then it would default to the all. Here is where we can define who it is and what it is that we're targeting, right? The user, which company, etc. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and modify my all. So up comes this screen that lets me see everything that's on the sales order screen. A lot of this stuff you may not even use. If you don't use job cost in Sage 100, then you're not going to see the job number fields. They're not going to be there, right? In my case, in my system, it's a demo system, so therefore I have that option in my system. I can drag things into new positions. Again, being careful of where I put them so that they're not off the screen, etc. Okay, but I'm just going to make a space in here. I can click this little button right here that says Add Field and simply draw a box. It says, hey, there's the UDF you made for the sales order header. Hit select. It's telling me, hey, you've got to set the size to 1. It's a query button next to it. Okay, so there it is. If I want to make it wider, I can, right? I can right click, go to options and say, hey, make this 15. And it just made this option wider. Okay, very simple process. Save it. Close this. And then back in sales order entry, we now have the option of order source. When we click the lookup, there are our options to select from. We can type ahead and it will validate it, right? So I could say YouTube. Now, back to that thing of when people are in the system, right? Can I still make changes to that list? And that's why we recommend like you use these user-defined tables, because yes, I can come into this here again. I can find my order source UDT, right click, and maintain that data. And I could come in here and say, my goodness, right? Hit accept, close. Nothing special I have to do, right? I can go back to the sales order. If I click the lookup, right? Oh, hey, there's my high school football ad. Right. So it gives me a way to simply add a field. It's a special lookup. I'm making it optional. Someone wouldn't have to fill it out because I haven't required it, right? There's ways to default that information in there. Know that we can, I did it on the sales order header, right? But if I go over to lines, I can actually add a field in here, right? And I can source it. Sage gives us the ability when we add fields to source from, say, an item code, right? Pull in what the value is on the field, this field on the item code while we do it. And so when you're setting up those custom fields, there's an option inside of that setup that says, hey, where do you want to get the data from? And in my case, right, on the order source, I said manual entry, but I could come into edit fields on the sales order detail level and say, I want to know, let's say standard unit cost. At the moment that someone selected an item, what was the standard cost? So I can use the business object and I can say, using the item code as the source, to pull into this field for me the standard cost, which obviously there's a lot of fields on it. There it is. Okay. You probably wouldn't use this, but just as an example, if I click OK and I put that field in my grid, now I can see after I select an item, it would pull in the standard cost to that sales order and save it with that sales order at that moment in time. This business object is a way to pull information from other areas that are related. Okay. All this information can be flowed through, like in the sales order, I could put a UDF on the sales order header and the detail. I can move it into invoicing so it's visible there. When you post the invoice, then I can see it inside of invoice history header or detail, and that allows for reporting. So if I was to say, hey, I want to track the order source for every single order, and I do that, then on the other side, when invoices are posted, et cetera, now I can have reports that simply say, hey, now that I've got a order source field, I can tell where my orders are coming from, right? And report off of that. So those fields can be added. You can add a lot of fields. We have some clients that have, I mean, I think one probably has 30 different fields on their item, right? So some people will have fields on the item for descriptions. Know that when you do that, there's a little thing that we kind of bypassed. But if I go to item maintenance here, this is my screen, right? I've got all these tabs here. When I customize this panel, okay, and we'll just use, what are we in, PMZ right now? So I have one company, so I have two company specific screens. Let's edit the PMZ one. All these fields are good, right? I don't really want to get to that, but what I'm after is this. Know that I can right click this and I could say, you know what, I want to add a panel. And I could say part info. Okay, and then I can go to the panel. It's going to say, hey, do you want to save this? But notice there's a tab up here now. Yes. Again, I can drag my field and say, hey, I need to know what genre the book is in this case. Yes. And I'll close it. Back in inventory management, item maintenance. right? I now have a new tab, part info, and it says what genre is the book. Feel like the genre field wouldn't be a type in field, probably be a drop down, but just to show an example. So again, in these things that we're doing, they survive upgrades very easily natively. But again, sometimes Sage is adding fields. So sometimes, like if they add a field to this screen and you have extra UDFs like this one, notes for item, right? Let's say Sage adds a field right here. Now we're going to have some overlap. So we're going to use that customized screen to then fix it, right? Drag it off, drag it to a new spot, move it to its own tab, all these different options that we can talk about of how do we best solve this. Obviously, if it's a new tab, Sage isn't going to touch that, right? Because it's its own tab. So that wouldn't get affected. You can also actually make a button and call it, say, additional info, click it, and pop up a full screen to add fields to. We have a client that I think they do like mins and max for testing, and probably not joking when I say there's probably 40 UDFs on a screen. That is all these different tests that they do against the item, right? Based on the item type and things like that. So a lot of options when it comes to that. And the great part is when you upgrade, that stuff traditionally, right, has gone very easy. So that's a little bit about UDFs, customizing screens. I mentioned scripting before I pass to Mary, because I know I'm running a little bit off here. But when it comes to scripting, which is something we do a lot, it is a very native part of the solution. So when we upgrade and we move servers, our scripts get brought over and then we relink them, right? And so a script, and I don't know if I have any in here, I do not, okay. A script is something that based on an activity, right? So I can come in and say, hey, when I'm in the sales order header, someone on the event of a column being changed, and let's just say the customer number, okay, I can fire, I'm just going to do something silly, a script that does something, right? Maybe it goes out and checks against another database that customer number and pulls in information. Sometimes, like Alex asked a question about work tickets. We're in the work ticket and someone selects the sales order, right? We can write back to the sales order through a script to say, hey, this sales order in this line, this is the work ticket number aligned to it, right? Through this scripting function. And then again, when you upgrade, scripts come along with it, right? We're not modifying Sage's code in any way. This is a function of Sage to allow us to add these scripts in without having any effect on their core code, right? And then you get in here to write scripting, right? It's its own little language, and you can, this is something silly, but right, and a simple little script. So now if I deploy this, compile, very simply, if I come in and I say, hey, give me a new sales order, check your customer name, right? Little pop-up message box. Obviously, we wouldn't do that, and you'd make it smarter, right? But there's a lot of applications for this because it can be field specific, table specific. So when you create a new order, we can look and say, hey, does this rule apply? Or when you save the order, we can check information to say, hey, based on this field, did they fill out these fields? Like we can add intelligence around these things. So scripting is something that we spend a lot of time working with our clients to help them keep their system organized and clean in a good, solid workflow. Okay, so any questions on what we just covered?
Chris, Alex had a question about make WT checkbox in sales order entry.
Right, that's DWD's version, right? So what Alex is referring to is in sales order entry. I think someone else mentioned that Scanco finally has this, but it was something we wrote back when this came out. So we wrote the ability to either default based on the item, right? The item is a make item, so then hey, it's got it, or it's a checkbox that's on the lines. And then you can say, hey, make work tickets for these things. And in demo purposes, we made a button that said, okay, make the work ticket. So if I simply, just real quick to show this is a great scripting example, I could have an order. Thanks, check your customer name. I could go to the lines, pick my Adirondack chair because I know it's got a bill, right? I can say make a work ticket for that. I could add other lines, right, as I need to. But I can come back here and say make the work ticket, and then it created it for me. And then over here, we can see the work ticket number, and if I want to see that work ticket it just created, up it comes. And that's done with scripting, right? We're not modifying Sage's core code, we're just using what we're given. And then that aligns it back to the sales order, all those good things. Some people do it from the work ticket side and line it back to the sales order, right? There are some people that say, hey, I want to do it from the sales order. We have a very simple script process that we set up to accomplish that.
Thank you.
Yes. All right. I'll go ahead and save these changes. No. All right, Miss Mary, you give me a moment here. I will pass the baton, as they say. Okay, you should have it.
I do. And we're going to spend a few minutes talking about some of the utilities and shortcuts that Sage has available. Some of them are new utilities, some of them have been relocated, but they're all pretty good pieces of information and very helpful in allowing us to navigate through the software when something bizarre needs to happen. So first of all, some things that I want to share with us today. I want to talk a little bit about theme maintenance. Chris referred to that earlier. There are the hidden utilities, which some of us may have been familiar with some old styles of accessing certain utilities, but Sage has pulled a lot of those together and put them in their own separate menu now. There's the concept of the automatic update of the daily transaction register. Chris referred to that as part of our role maintenance functionality. There is a new feature for reversing accounts payable checks. You know, we get that dreaded moment when we've updated our check register and then we realize all the checks got printed on the backside of the check forms. There's also a feature in payroll where we have the ability to reverse checks. And there's also an automated journal entry reversal functionality. And then I do want to spend a moment talking a little bit about the default form maintenance. So theme maintenance. I work with a number of folks who have lots of different companies that they are managing within their Sage 100, or they might have a live company and they may have a couple of sample companies. And there is nothing more dreaded than putting in a whole bunch of data entry because we didn't pay attention to the company in which we were working. And then we realized, oh, boo, I have posted all of that information. I've spent my entire day working in the wrong company. Well, Sage gives us an opportunity to do some color coordinations where we can actually set up color schemes and apply those schemes to different company codes, helping the user with a visual identification of the company in which they're working. There's a functionality called theme maintenance. I'm going to pop over. I'm going to spend a lot of my time actually in the software as well. So in our library master module, under the main folder, there is this function called theme maintenance. And in this, we have some default codes that are built into Sage 100. We've got the classic theme, we've got a blue theme and a green theme. And when we first started migrating to the updated user interface, we had these types of color schemes available. What Sage is giving us the ability to do now is to create new theme codes. And so I'm going to call this one just user group for lack of anything better. And on here, we can update things, not only the color schemes for the backgrounds or the frames, we can change our fonts, we can change our icon set, we can color code the tabs, we can color code buttons, primary buttons and secondary buttons, and we can make some modifications to our rows in our grids. So I'm going to pick on the background and the frame color here. And I've been playing with this for quite some time, and it took a little while for me to realize what I needed to do to deploy a color. So Sage gives us some default colors in a template here, and we can just easily pick one of these, but I like to be obstinate and I like to pick my own color scheme. So I have to first click on a color, one of the custom color boxes, and they're all black right now, so I want to make a change to that. What I can do is, first of all, change the gradation and lighten or darken the color that I end up picking. I could leave it at that gray, that's fine. Or I can start to swirl around the color palette and I can find a color that might be not terribly offensive, or maybe I want to make it really offensive so that we know that we're in the wrong company code. So I'm going to go ahead and select this kind of aqua-y teal, and I'm going to put that into my custom color tablet. And then I'm going to also pick another flavor here and maybe use kind of a burnt orange, and I'll add that to my custom color template. So for my background, I'm going to use the lighter color because that's going to make it a little bit easier for me to read. And then on the frame, I'm going to select the darker color just to give it some pop. So as an example, we can see what these things start to look like. I can also make changes to the buttons. I can change the row height where I shrink it a little bit. I leave it at its standard, or I give myself a little bit more space. And if I want to alternate the line color, I could easily change and maybe have an offsetting so it makes each line easier to read. Now, how do I get this over to my company code? I'm going to save the setting here, and I move over to my company maintenance, and I'm going to go ahead and pick the company that I want to change the color scheme for. So I'll go ahead and select that, and I have a new theme tab over here, which hadn't existed previously. I can now select the theme that I want. So I'll set this up as my user group demo theme. And once I accept this, when I start moving into module specifics, then that theme will present itself, and I have this offsetting color, so I now know that I'm in a different company code. We always have the code up here in the title bar, we have it down at the bottom, but a lot of times if we're not paying attention, or if we're moving between a number of different companies, we forget. And if we don't have this color pop at us, then we may realize that we're in the wrong space. So that's just some fun stuff that we can do with the theme maintenance. Hidden utilities. Let's go wander over to that. Many of you who have been in Sage 100 or even Mass 90 for a number of years, Chris had talked about the clear payments today. And that was a bizarro utility with a cryptic code name that we'd have to type in. It was ARWAR4. So if you folks remember that from the old days, what Sage has done is it's taken a number of other utilities and it's put them into its own menu. So if we go back over to Sage again, and we go to our file menu, and you realize that we have to have permissions in order to even get to the file run function. We're going to type in *UTL for utilities, and Sage will then pop up a menu of the various utilities that are available. So we have not only our old friend, the AR open invoice payments today, but we have a new friend here for the accounts payable invoices. Again, if we've selected AP invoices and we've started to apply and it's just not acting correct, we can run this utility and kind of clear everything out and allow us to start over. There are a number of other utilities in here. Some of them may or may not be applicable depending on what modules you're working with, but we have that accessibility under this custom menu. So instead of having to remember what that weirdo command is, it's a slightly less weird command, *UTL. So that's a little fun thing that has come along. Another fun thing that we have is the ability to copy lists from one company code to another. Oftentimes, especially when we're setting up a new company, we have to populate lists, and we may have information from one company code that we want to migrate over to another company code. There's a special function called SVTRNA, and please don't ask me what that stands for because I don't have a clue. But what we get to do with this is we can opt to copy accounts payable vendor information, including setup information, accounts receivable customer information, including setup information, and inventory items and additional setup information. So as an example here, what I might want to do is I have a company that has a bunch of inventory items in it, and I want to copy those inventory items into a new company. So I want to be in the destination company into where I want these things put. And again, I use my file run function. And in this case, SVTRNA, doesn't matter whether it's upper or lowercase, it's all going to work out the same. And I get a screen that says, okay, copy into which company? Well, I'm going to copy into my ABC company. Copy from which company? Well, I want to copy from my PMZ company in this case. Which module do I want to copy? Well, I want to copy inventory items. And depending on the copy that you're copying, the company from which you're copying, especially with AR and AP, you may have to make sure that certain settings are similar, like if you're using divisions or whatnot, because it might yell at you that you cannot copy from one to the other without certain things being set the same in both companies. But I can go ahead and copy items, and I can pick and choose whether I want a range of items or if I want to grab all items. Do I want to copy my warehouses? Do I want to copy my alternate or my alias items? Do I want to copy units of measure conversions? Do I want to copy extended descriptions? All of these things that we often would have had to use the Visual Integrator module to do. We'd have to export it from the one company, and then we'd have to turn around and import it into the second company. All of this stuff is actually done in the background by Sage with this utility. So I'll go ahead and copy, and then it offers me a file that I can review what all got copied. And the things that got copied, it recognizes, okay, some warehouses already existed. I might have some price codes, units of measure, things like that, some things that may have been copied from one to the other, lets us know if there are some discrepancies that have occurred, and we can go ahead and resolve those types of discrepancies. And once I have all of that, I can then go look at my parts, which I didn't show you the before, unfortunately. But as I look, I can start to see some things that may not have actually been applicable to my original company. You can see the effect of the alternating lines for the colors from the theme maintenance. It makes it a little bit easier for us to read those things. And I now have combined inventory from multiple companies all in one location. So it's a pretty slick little gizmo as we're setting up new companies. Like I mentioned, we may be putting all of our changes into the one, and then we need to move it over to the live company, but we don't want to copy the company because we don't want to copy all the transactional test history that we have. So these functions give us the ability to bring over clean lists in from one place into another. So that's kind of a nice feature that I've used a number of times. The new thing that I have absolutely appreciated with the latest versions of Sage 100 is the function to automatically update the daily transaction register. I've spent a lot of time converting users from the likes of QuickBooks or Sage 50 Peachtree, even Sage BusinessWorks into Sage 100. And for those of you who may have familiarity with those other software packages, we realize those are real-time posting functions, systems. And so when I say save, it hits everything all at once. Well, in Sage 100, we all know that this is a batch processing system. And we have to post not only the source journal information, but we also have to make sure that the daily transaction register gets posted. And a lot of people forget to click, or they get in a hurry and they don't answer yes. Do you want to print the daily transaction register? Do you want to update the daily transaction register? And the next thing we know, we have our general ledger that's not making any sense, even though all of our details are okay. So the functionality for us to be able to automatically update the daily transaction register is identified in our role maintenance. So under our library master security folder, we can go into our role maintenance and we can identify a role. In this case, I'll pick my admin role. And under the security options tab, it's not a specific task, but it's actually a security option. In each module, we have the option to automatically update the daily transaction register. If this is turned off, I am going to get the prompts. If this is turned on and I go through the process, it will go ahead and it will actually do the posting automatically for me. So I'm going to use accounts payable as an example here. And I'm going to go ahead and post an invoice real quick. So my invoice data entry function, I'm going to pick my vendor and type in my invoice number. I'm going to move my date here just because I know my data is in the year 2025. And we're going to put in a $1,000 invoice. Go ahead, and I've got a default GL account already set up. And I'm ready to go ahead and post. So we're going to kind of keep an eye on this because it will move moderately quickly here. When I go ahead and print, of course, if I'm linked to my paperless office, then I should get my reports to pop up in my PDF. And I'll see that here. So, yep, I get my reports to show. I can review those, make sure that they are correct. And then I get my question do you want to update? And this is, again, this is the source journal. So I'll say, yes, I want to go ahead and update. And very, very quickly, I will see the screen for the daily transaction register, but you'll notice that it actually went ahead and answered the question, do you want to print? Do you want to update? And because I flew this through paperless office, I can actually go in and I can recover the transactions that occurred. So even though I didn't see the daily transaction register, I didn't get to review it right away. I do have access to it, and I did not have to answer those questions anymore. So for new users, it's probably a really, really, really good thing to just get that disabled, or I'm sorry, get that part enabled so that the daily transaction register just automatically does what it's supposed to do. For those of you who've been on the systems for a while, it's up to you. I love that feature. I encourage enabling it for folks. And if you want some help getting that set up, just let me know and we'll point you in the right direction. Or you can come back to this video and review it and locate those settings as well. Couple other things here, the reversals. AP, reversing a check run. Wow, that is so delightful. Instead of having to manually go in and plug all of those things into our manual check and payment entry, we get the ability in Sage to either recall a specific source journal and register number, or to go to a bank code and pick off a check number from at least one of the checks in the check run. What that does, though, is it will reverse all of those checks in the batch related to the selected check. So the difference here is if you need to reverse the entire run, let's use this utility. If you only need to reverse one or two checks in the run, we're going to stick with our manual check and payment entry process. So let's go see what that looks like. If I go back to my payables and I go hunting in my utilities menu, there's a new function down here called reverse check run. If you are on a newer version of Sage 100 and you do not see this, you will probably need to get into your role maintenance and make sure that that option is enabled for your role. So if we get into the reverse check run function, we can see that we can either pick by bank code or and check number, or by source journal and register number. Well, I don't remember the register number it is, but I do remember the check number. So I'm going to go ahead and pick it by the check number. I'll pick the bank code, and then I will go locate the check number that I want to reverse, 1729. What this is going to do is it's going to show me checks that are related to that. I'm going to go ahead and pick the one that I want to reverse, and it grabs all of the checks that were in the affected source journal. So if I go back through reports, I will find that I had exactly two checks in cash disbursements journal register number 4, and these are the checks that I'm going to reverse. If I'm sure that I want to go about it this way, I can go ahead and tell Sage to proceed. And then Sage will offer me the register. There's really nothing to review because I've already selected the checks that I want to reverse. And I can go ahead and give it a posting date. Sage will automatically recall the original invoices. So unlike the manual check and payment entry, when I have to answer that question for myself, Sage will automatically make that selection for me. And then we'll just go ahead and we'll get this thing processed. And again, I get my report and it will confirm for me that yes, these are the two checks that I choose to reverse. And this is the effect on the general ledger that will occur. And if I am comfortable with that, I can go ahead and update the reversal. And then I can go back into my vendors. And here is that $75 check for this particular vendor. And I can see that it got reversed. And so I'll be able to repay this. I'm sorry, wrong one. Here it is. Here's the one that got reversed. I can see the original invoice. I can see the payment. I can see the reversal of the payment. So it reestablishes that balance for that particular invoice. And I just go ahead and reselect it for payment, or I adjust it out because I don't need that invoice any longer. So that's kind of a cool function. For those of you who run payroll, oh, how many times have we needed to reverse a payment? And it's not a simple process. It's not an impossible process, but we'd have to go through, we'd have to enter in the bank code and the check number and the check date. We'd have to go through and put all the hours in as negative, and we'd have to go in and manually calculate the taxes. And that was always a debacle. You know, it just made it really, really, really tough. And I need to get to a company that has payroll that's been converted. I think it's this one. Because I applied an update the other day and I might not have updated everybody. So I would still go ahead and select my cycle, my pay cycle. So it'd be a weekly, and I would specify the period start date or the end date. And I'm probably not picking good options here, but I can identify, you know, when I want this to reverse. I'll get the typical prompt about automatically paying employees. Well, in this case, I need to reverse a check. You know, the dog ate my check, or I need to refigure it because I didn't get overtime added in, or what have you. So I would go ahead and I'll pick the employee. And unfortunately, I don't have the history, and I forgot to look at this before this morning, and I apologize, but there's a button here for the reversal. And when I select this button, Sage will go out and it will look for all of the payroll checks that are attached to this particular employee, and it will allow me to select which check I want to reverse. And once I click that, all of this information gets populated. All of the tax information gets negated, regardless of what the particular tax profiles might be. On the lines tab, all of the earnings codes would be negated. The hours would be negated so that the dollars would be negative. All I get to do then is just click accept. If I need to reverse additional checks, I go to the next employee, do the reversal. I'm ready to calculate and post. So so much easier being able to just quickly reverse a check rather than having to manually go through and click on all of the buttons and make the calculations or type in the dollars or what have you. So this is, you know, working a lot with folks who do payroll. This is a really awesome feature. And I've got one or two more little goodies here. We talked about the payroll check reversal, even direct deposit. It handles the direct deposits appropriately. So that's pretty beautiful. As you can see in my demo here, or the slide here, I call up the employee, I call up the reversal, I pick the check number, and then it just automatically goes through and it reverses everything that we need. One of the last reversal functions that I want to chat about here quickly is the journal entry reversal. This one gets pretty fun because we can do some clever things, if you will. First of all, we have to make sure that the user has permissions to do journal entry reversals. Second of all, we access this function through account maintenance, not account inquiry. And then lastly, we go into our account maintenance function. And again, we can just go ahead and pick whatever general ledger account that we want. And maybe I want to adjust some use tax here. And I don't have any transactions in that account, so let's go find an account that has some transactions. There we go. Here's a good one. So I might have an account here that I want to either reverse the journal entry or maybe shift the timing of that entry. Often we have situations where we've got our, let's say, for example, invoice dates that are in the correct period, but we neglected to select the correct general ledger date. What we can do with this is we can highlight the journal entry. And again, we have this nifty little blue reversing button. We go ahead and click onto that. And Sage will offer us a message that says, hey, the reversal is complete. Review the entry in general journal entry before updating. So just as a side-by-side here, let's show you what this entry looks like. Here is the original entry. I've got some work in process debits. I've got an accounts payable credit. I've got an applied overhead. So all of these accounts will be affected by this reversal. So to make this happen, I need to go back to the general ledger, to the general journal entry function. This does not happen in transaction journals. It only happens in the general ledger. And I can see that I have a source journal AP, and I have a reversal of a journal. When I go to look at this transaction as a basis of comparison here, and I compare it to my original entry, everything that was previously a debit is now a credit, and vice versa. So Sage just saved me from having to type all this stuff in with the potential of picking the wrong account, with the potential of picking the wrong dollar amount, with not remembering to get debits and credits all hooked up. And what I want to do with this entry is, it was originally posted on 5/15. I need to time shift this entry in such a way that it is actually dated for, let's say, April. Maybe I just didn't pay attention to my computer date or my module date when I was posting this, but the invoices all were dated properly for April. So on my reversing entry, I have my original posting date. So I want to take this out as of 5/15 of 25, but I need to redate this so that it actually shows up in April. And of course, I do not have a good prior period. I'm going to just go ahead and shift this to 6/02. So again, with the reversing date, I'm creating two entries basically concurrently without having to do all that work. I'll go ahead and accept this. I was getting yelled at because I couldn't pick April because that was a closed month. And I go ahead and process my general journal. And I get the entry that says, hey, I'm going to reverse this as of the 31st of May, and then I am going to do a reversing, post it as of the 15th, reverse it as of the June 2nd, okay? And my credits will become debits again as of June 2nd. So we'll go ahead and let this thing post. I had 2 sneaky journal entries in there. That's why the second screen popped the way it did. When I go back to look at this particular account, I can see my original reverse. I can see the reversal of the transaction that occurred on the 15th. But if I look a little further, I can now see the establishment of that entry on the date that I really need it to be. So a real nice, quick function. I often use it to time shift data to get it into a new period without having to deconstruct and reconstruct everything manually. All right, last little tidbit that I want to share with you before I turn it over to Pete has to do with a new function that we found called default form maintenance. And I cannot tell you how many times I have gone into a client's system and the form codes, there would be 15, 30 different form codes because somebody got click happy and type happy and started creating form codes on the fly. So as an example here, if I am in, let's say, for example, sales order, and I'm hustling through that I need to print something, and I'm not paying any attention, when I go to print, I get a screen that pops up, and if I'm just, crazy, moving fast, not paying attention, and I'm just clicking buttons, I create a new form code. And of course, it's not going to have any of my customizations on it. It's just going to start itself out as a standard form code. And then my employees are going to wonder, why is this not printing out correctly? So I get the blank form, the normal form code. Well, I want to lock this down, or I want to define a default form code for my user so that they don't either A, have to worry about picking what the form code is, or even B, keep them from creating a new form code when we don't want one. Very much like we can set a default form code for our AP checks in bank code maintenance, I can set default form codes now for my users in other areas of the software. So under the Library Master Setup folder, there is a function here called Default Form Maintenance. And as I go into this, I can pick and choose for which company I want this to be applicable. And in this case, I'm going to pick my ABC company. I can choose either by a user ID if I want to really limit a specific user, or if I want to limit this to a group of users based on their role, I can go ahead and select, excuse me, the role that I want to apply this to. And I can see all of the different areas where various forms get printed. So for my sales order form, I want to pick my customized form, and I want that to be the default for all of my users in this particular role. I can even go so far as to lock so that the user can't even try to choose a different form code. So we can go ahead and save these settings, and now when a user in that particular role goes back to print, and I can go ahead and say I want to print this order, my form code selection is grayed out and I can't change it. Hallelujah. So I can go ahead and print this document, and this is the custom version that my user would then get. And we don't have to worry about them not getting the correct version. We don't have to worry about them changing any of the settings. We just know that they will get the exact form that they need when they need it. So I think that option came along maybe in 2021, but we just didn't hunt it down until recently. So I'm pretty excited to share that as a new feature with you folks. All righty then, I'm going to open this up if anybody has any questions. I didn't see any come in on the chat. If you do have questions, feel free to hunt me down later, and we can certainly talk about some of these things that I was able to share with you this morning.
Thank you, Mary. Great information.
Welcome, everybody. I think I'm your last presentation before a lunch break, so I will try to zip through this and probably won't have a lot of time for questions. But I'll give you my email information, contact information at the beginning and then at the very end. So don't worry about jotting that down. Obviously, Chris, Mary, everybody else has that as well. So if I mention something as I go through this and you just want some clarification or maybe a recommendation for a piece of software or something, feel free to email me. Get those all the time and don't mind doing that at all. So my topic is new IT security risks that come with cloud solutions. It's kind of a misnomer. They're not really new. There's just a new emphasis. And they're kind of prioritized a little bit differently, at least in my mind, than just on-site network security. So let me move on. Again, this is my information. I'm director on the network side. My email's up there. That's just our main phone number. This will pop up again at the end. So no need to jot it down real quick. And why does this topic matter? I always like to start off that way as you're sitting there wondering, why does this matter to me? A lot of times I'll take a poll. When we're in person, it's a lot more fun. I won't try to do it through this, but I asked to see a show of hands for people that use Office 365 for at least email. And the last couple times I've done this, I think we're up to about 75, 80% of people that pop their hands up. I see some hands going up. Awesome. Didn't know how many people knew how to do that. I could pick other ones, but Microsoft, especially 365, happens to be like the most common. So that gives us something that we can talk about that most people can relate to. So if you're using that, you're using a cloud provider. So all the things that I'm going to talk about during this next 15, 20 minutes, I'm going to use Microsoft for the most part as an example. Gartner's a very, very common research group. They always have some fun numbers to look at, and this is kind of an interesting one. They are predicting that through 2025, which this is kind of scary, but is only a few years away, 99% of the cloud security failures will be us, not the cloud provider. And that kind of shocks a lot of people because they just assume all these gigantic corporations like a Microsoft have super secure facilities and super secure software and offerings. Why are they not the ones responsible for all this? And that comes down to some unique things. If you're on Microsoft 365, you've agreed to their shared responsibility model, whether you realize it or not. If you look at all the fine print, this is one of the sections. I was tempted to copy and paste it here, but it gets very boring really fast. The gist of it is they will tell you right up front, here's what we're responsible for, and everything else is on you. So where do those lines get drawn? At the base level, any cloud provider, in our case Microsoft we're talking about, is responsible for the facilities where they have all these servers, all these pieces of actual hardware, nuts, bolts, all that. The utilities that feed those, the internet connection, heating and cooling, power, the people that go in and take care of the facilities, all that's on them. That's obvious. You would have no way of doing that anyway. That's why you're paying them. Everything on top of that, though, comes down to just some different levels. 3 really common ones. And by the way, I tried to keep this in a specific order. So going from the least amount that they're responsible for to the SaaS where it's the most that the cloud provider is responsible for. Then we'll get into stuff you're responsible for. But starting at the least, it's still a lot, but the least amount they're responsible for is IaaS, infrastructure as a service. And that's kind of like what the bullet point above that is talking about. the nuts, the bolts, the utilities, the cables, all that stuff that there's no way for you to do and you wouldn't want to. They are providing that. As soon as you do anything else on top of that, it's you. So as soon as you install a server or workstation operating system, everything from that point on is you. They're only responsible for the bullet point above. The next step up is platform as a service. And in that case, they are responsible for the operating system, patches, security. They'll make sure that that stuff is all in place. And again, I'm making this very specific to Microsoft. Some people's platform as a service is a little bit different from this, but they have a lot of common areas. And then the one where they're responsible for the most is software as a service. And this would be things like, I don't know why the one that always comes to mind, which is not a good example probably in a Sage presentation, is QuickBooks. But QuickBooks Online, very popular for the QuickBooks users. They keep everything up to date. So they have the QuickBooks install, the version, any updates that come out, patches, security, all that, they are responsible for. And that sounds awesome. Microsoft is responsible on the email side for everything right up until the point where you touch it. So that's an important handoff. And here is what we are responsible for. And I say we as the consumers. The biggest one is the first one listed, identity and access management. Then application configurations and data. And if you look at each one of these, it makes sense. Just like I said before, we can't be responsible for the hardware, the cables, the nuts, the bolts, the utilities. Well, turn that around. They can't be responsible for identity and access management. They can't make you create specific users with specific passwords. We wouldn't want them to. So if you create a user with a super easy to guess password and cut them loose, that's on you if there is a breach. Same thing with application configurations. They can lock those down to a certain extent, but as most of you, I'm sure, are aware, that's one of the first things people complain about when they move from an on-site application to a cloud is, oh, it's nice, but it's so locked down. I can't do all the things I wanted to do. Well, a lot of times it's because of this. If they totally open that up, there could be some misconfiguration, which would create security holes. And then the last thing, of course, is data. They can't control what you put on those servers. So whether you're putting personal information, client stuff, things that would be at risk, that's on you. So here are some of the actual threats themselves. Not super specific. I'm still keeping this kind of broad, and then we'll talk about how you can address those. But the first one, as I said, insufficient identity access management, credentials, any of that, if that's not secure, that's a problem. Here's the next one that's interesting. I don't spend a lot of time on insufficient identity. That one's kind of obvious, but the next two are not. Insecure interfaces and APIs. So one of the first things people want to do when they move to a cloud app is get it to talk to another app, whether it's another cloud app or something on site and maybe even a piece of equipment. But one of the first things they want to do is open up that app. That can create problems if they're not doing it in a secure way. And the one that almost no one's going to think of is unsecured third-party resources. So several years ago, I know I got my first call from a client who was asking some very detailed questions about what we use to support them. And I finally asked why they were asking all this. Was there a problem? What's going on? And it was insurance based. Their insurance provider, cybersecurity, told them it's no longer enough just to know that DWD is your outsourced IT group. Let's say this particular one, we're a managed services provider. They want to know who we use and what tools we use to provide those services, because they're not just going to take your word for it anymore. And the same thing goes for us as a consumer. So Datto, if anybody's heard of that, for backup, for remote monitoring and management, that's one of our big partners. Before, we could just ask them, are you secure? Yes, we're secure. We're telling you we're secure. Now we have to say, okay, who do you use, Datto, to provide your services? And they have a dynamic document that sits on their website that we can get to via a link anytime we need to provide that to one of our insurance providers. So we get to see it from both sides. A lot of fun. How do you protect yourself? Now for the good stuff. So number one, and by the way, it used to be whenever I would talk security, local network stuff, it was almost always the very first thing out of the gate was backups. I will have one bullet point up there for backups. It's kind of slid down the list. Doesn't mean it's not hugely important, but at this stage of the game, I think most people are aware of how important backups are, and why backups are important here for the cloud's a little bit different. So I've moved that down, but just to explain why that's not showing up is the very first thing I talk about. Require secure passwords. Whenever you're setting up users, your first user, or you, if you're the administrator especially, you want to have secure passwords. This used to mean 8 characters in length, and then 2 or 3 of 4 requirements like uppercase, lowercase, numbers, special characters. This has been changing over the last year or so. A lot of companies, Microsoft included, are saying now, let's make them really strong. But one thing they were saying before, which was change them often, they're now saying don't change them often. So it's kind of a give and take. What everybody's finding is when you ask people to change passwords all the time, they try to get creative by adding like a 1 or a 2 or a 3 or an exclamation mark at the end of the same password they had used before, because they're tired of changing them every month. Or they get to the point where they can't remember because they just changed this thing for the 5th time, so they're jotting it down on a sticky note, putting it on their computer. Worst cases, and unfortunately we see this all the time, a laptop will come, someone will drop a laptop off here for one of the people to look at, one of our techs, and they open it up and there's the password right on the keyboard, right under the keyboard of the laptop. And it wasn't that they just put it on there. You can tell it's been taped there for a long time because they were tired of remembering it. So if anybody snagged that laptop, they're in. So the new way of looking at this is very secure passwords that you don't have to change all that often. And another important requirement, don't reuse. So if you're using Sage, let's say online, it's a hosted provider and you have a very strong password, that's great. You only have to change it once a year, that's awesome. Don't also use that password for Netflix. Don't use that password for Gmail. Don't, even though it may be an awesome password, you're so proud of it, it's super strong, it's something you can remember, you don't want to have to come up with another one, don't reuse them. To come up with all these super strong passwords and have a bunch of them, you may want to consider something like LastPass or some other kind of password management tool. If you want to email me, I know the last user conference just last week, several people wanted to email later and ask for a list of some recommendations maybe. We use LastPass, we like that. That's a nice one. The second one that goes right along with the first is use multi-factor authentication. I know tons of people have to use this now. When we first started talking multi-factor, it was just groans that we heard. You'd ask for a show of hands how many people had to use it, like with their banks or whoever. You'd get a few. Now, I think the last time I asked, again, it was like 80% of the room has used multi-factor in some way and uses it actively in a lot of ways. Just get used to it. It doesn't mean you have to like it, but it has gotten a lot easier. A lot of the multi-factor apps are very simple. It's not that you have to get sent a code and enter that code somewhere. It's just your app shows up on the phone and says, is this you? You tap yes, and you're off and running. So if you've used Duo, that's one that I know we use internally and a lot of our clients use. That one's super easy to use, but man, that really protects you. Even if your password is compromised, they can't get in. So it's kind of a must anymore. Create least privilege roles. This is something a lot of people don't think about, but let's just say you have 20 users in your network, only 3 of which need access to financials to do their job. The other 17 users should not have access to financials. So you only want to give people rights to stuff they need to do their jobs. That's it. Disable inactive accounts. This is boring, but it's just cleanup, and hopefully it's either on your calendar or we'll go on there after this. Just every quarter, 6 months, even worst case a year even, go through your Active Directory It may be Azure Active Directory if you don't have any local servers anymore, if you're totally online. But go through your users, because every time we sit down with a client and do this, it seems like every single time somebody comes up, oh, they're not with us anymore. They're not with the company anymore, but their account's not disabled. So huge risk on that because you don't know what they're doing once they're outside. So many usernames now are just an email address, so very easy to guess. And if they're using the password they were using at your company in whatever new company, or like I said before, Netflix somewhere else, and it gets compromised, you could possibly be compromised. So kind of be vigilant there on the inactive accounts. Provide anti-phishing training. If you've heard of KnowBe4, that's probably the biggest player in the field. That's who we use. We have several clients using that as well. But anti-phishing, usually these providers include training, and then kind of the key part of what they provide is test phishing emails. So they will randomly send out emails to your employees to try to get them to bite. And if they do, they click on something they shouldn't. Different providers handle this differently, but for the most part in this, if you click on something you shouldn't, it comes up and tells you that and then tells you why. I know with KnowBe4, they have several different levels, and depending on what level, it'll be more informative, I guess, or more verbose about telling you why. And then it'll also tell you, based on what the administrator of the product has chosen, whether you have to go get some training. It could be a 3-minute video, 5-minute video, or whether it's just a warning, don't do it again. But what we have found, this is really, really effective. I had my doubts when these things first came out. I thought they'd be effective for a while, and then it would kind of wear off, but they're not. They actually really keep people on their toes. You can make this fun if you don't want to make it an employee bashing thing for people that click on something they shouldn't. But awesome tool, very nice, and not all that expensive. Here, finally, backups show up. They're not really that far down on the priority list, but backup for the cloud has kind of have changed a little bit. It's still really, really important. So since I'm using 365 as my example here, and a lot of things, I'll talk about that. So the shared responsibility model for Microsoft also includes reference to backups. They don't do backups for you. They have a super, super robust system. It rarely goes down. When it does, it's not down for very long, but they're not keeping long-term data and information for you for your 365 stuff, your email, your Teams, OneDrive. I think it's 30 days now is what they will claim to keep. But if you have somebody delete something and a month or two, more than a month or two out, they have to go back and try to get it, it's most likely gone. Just not going to be able to grab it. There are cloud-to-cloud backup systems. Datto, I mentioned before, we use for a lot of things. They also have one, used to be called Backupify. If you want information on any of these things, Datto's not the only one. Be more than happy to give you some, but they're also not very expensive. But most people just don't think about it because they think Microsoft's got them covered. And Microsoft is very good at the redundancy piece and keeping their stuff up and running, but they are not taking any responsibility for long-term backups for you. So backups are still important, but the cloud providers are getting very good at blocking encryption. And that used to be whenever we talk security, we said backups are your best friend, because if you come in and get ransomwared and somebody says either pay or we're not going to give you the key to decrypt your files, that's kind of changed in the cloud, because the cloud providers are pretty good at keeping their stuff from getting encrypted in the first place. But what the bad guys are doing now is they're copying the data. So they're not going in to encrypt it. They're actually going in and slowly, if they have to, so they don't raise any red flags, they will copy part or all data off. And then the threat you get is, we're going to publish it. So if you don't pay, we will publish your information. And if you don't have any information or data that you care gets published, then not a huge deal. But backups don't help you with that. And the other bad thing about that is they can keep doing it. So unlike the encryption thing where they send you a key, you decrypt, you're back up and running, then you're trying to strengthen yourself, with the will publish thing, there's nothing that keeps them from trying that once a month and just coming back and hitting you until you make that data no longer a risk, which for obvious reasons is really difficult to do. And the last one is, now that your application, let's just say it is just one, but let's, I guess, say you have multiple out there in the cloud, you don't really have servers and stuff locally that you have to strengthen. You're not worried about access to that as much. Your access, the gateway to your data and your applications, is now through the endpoints. So you have to make sure you're really creating very, very tough to get through, tough to break endpoint security. Anti-malware, antivirus, stuff like Trend, Bitdefender, those are excellent. If you want to take a step up, there's endpoint detect and response. That's what that EDR stands for. There's all kinds of new terms coming out on how this works, and AI this, AI that. They are more robust. They give you some failback features a lot of times, like the one we use is Sentinel-1. And if it detects a breach or somebody in doing something they're not supposed to be, it even has the ability to cut that computer off from the network, but allow us still access so we can go in and fight that. We can even roll back to a previous good image on the workstation. So they're a little bit more expensive than your standard anti-malware antivirus, but obviously additional features. So if you start seeing that term endpoint detect and response, EDR, endpoint detect management, I think, is another way they say it. But anything that starts with endpoint, that's what they're talking about. They're just trying to beef it up. But hugely important. I know we have several clients now who don't even have an office. Everybody works independently. All every worker has is a laptop. So there is no one firewall to get them behind and strengthen. Every one of their endpoints now is what we have to worry about. So hopefully that makes sense. And again, trying to keep the time shorter. Oh, not too bad. My email is up. My phone number's there. Also, anyone you know on the Sage side can get you in touch with me. But if you want any more information, or just want some clarification maybe on something I mentioned, or even some recommendations, feel free to shoot me an email and I will respond.
All right. Thank you, Pete.
I will turn it back to you, Chris.
We'll open it up if there's any other questions. This is the end of the first part of this day. Later today, starting at 1 o'clock, we have different sessions with different third-party vendors that we utilize at different clients. The ones that we've had success with, that we've, it's a solution that we think does bring value to the product, etc. So we encourage you to attend those. If you're not registered, you can find those at our website, www.dwdtechgroup.com. I believe our first session this afternoon at 1 o'clock is directly related to barcodes, warehouse and production automation. They're going to talk about scanning and how that all works with Sage 100. 2 o'clock, it's AP automation conversation until 2:30. Around 2:40 to 3:10, we're going to be talking e-commerce with the gold standard of SimCloud and its integration with Sage 100. And then from 3:20 to 4:10, we're going to be talking to Matt St. John from V Technologies, which is Starship. They handle all the shipping integration, be it a cloud or on-premise solution that can rate shop and really help you pick the most efficient way to ship the product from a cost and speed perspective. And then the last one for the day is 4:20 to 4:50, which is Altech. And so they really focus on efficiencies with the paper-based processes within your company and how do we digitize that. And Dan from Altech is going to speak to that information. So again, I just want to thank everyone for attending this morning. You can reach out to any of us. I believe all the names that I've seen this morning are all people that we definitely interact with. So reach out to us if you have questions or concerns. Yeah.
So for anybody attending the afternoon session, that will actually be using a new GoToWebinar link. So you should have a second email that has a link within it that you'll use then to connect to that afternoon session.
And if they have any issues with that, or you don't have the link and you want to attend that, then reach out to, and I'll bring that slide back up here in a second, lpeters@dwdtechgroup.com. Email Leah saying that you would like to attend that, and they will definitely get your name in there and send you that link. So again, thanks to everyone that attended this morning. Thanks to Mary and Pete and Sherry for getting this together, and everyone have a great day.